You are listening to Additional Crew Film Review with Nick Meyer and Andrew Gomez. These spoiler-heavy reviews are meant for entertainment purposes only. Please do not attempt anything said on this show at home. Now sit back, relax, and listen to these two dinguses talk about a movie. Enjoy! You're right. I do know you. I know everything about you. I know you take your almond milk in your coffee. I know you like your bed sheets untucked. I know your favorite hobbies are bar trivia, video games, and prattling on endlessly about Additional Crew. Hey, welcome in everybody. Today we have your host, Nick Meyer, and my lovely partner of a co-host, Janice. Of course, Andrew's not here today. He is dealing with some real life business for this episode and maybe a couple more. We'll see what's up with that. But that has given me this opportunity to hang out and talk with movies about my lovely partner. Now, she's watched most of these movies with me, of course, so you've heard her opinions before. She gets to be here and tell you them. Janice, what's going on?
Hi, everyone. I'm nervous and a little shaking right now, so I apologize. This is one of my first podcasts, but I'm Janice, like Nick said, and I am a just another goofy creative person and Nick's weirdo companion.
Which is really relevant, particularly for now, because this week we bring you the a weekend getaway with friends at a remote cabin turns into chaos after it's revealed that one of the guests is not what they seem. The movie Companion, of course, from 2025 this year, directed by Drew Hancock. We'll get it all into that a little bit later. Um, Janice got to choose this movie, so we're all excited. She gets to be here. She gets to choose the first movie, and it was a doozy. But first things first, I do want to address one point of very crucial business that we haven't really talked about much. So this podcast is coming out, I believe, April 18th. It might be the 17th. Either way, Thursday, April 17th is what I'm going to go with. And that is our 1 year anniversary. So we've actually been doing this thing for one full year. That is 24 of these episodes. Um, and they're not a burden on me. And I appreciate every single person that's listened to them. I'm sure that as you've gone with us, you've seen either growth or you've seen things change a little bit. And I am happy that you all are here. This is fun for me. It's fun for Andrew. It's fun for Janice. It's just it's a good time, and I really appreciate the fact that anyone puts any amount of time in listening to these things, because that's the most brilliant insanity I can imagine. So thank you.
I'm
um
so honored to be on your 1 year anniversary podcast, by the way. That's so awesome.
it's wonderful, and me and Janice, we've had a lot of anniversaries together. Anyway, um so
Yeah.
we will for the 1 year anniversary, I've had some ideas, and what I've kind of come to is this. So I want to give away a shirt. Now it's a one of a kind shirt, maybe two of a kind if I really love it, because I might make one for myself. But right now, plan one of a kind shirt. It's an Additional Crew shirt. The design is a little bit of it's a goof, if you will. Um, I think you'll enjoy it, whoever gets it. But essentially, I'm going to say a catchphrase later on in this, and I'll make it very clear that that's the shirt catchphrase. If whoever's the first person who sends that to me, either via Instagram at Additional Crew or via email, additionalcrewfilmreview@gmail.com, and their shirt size and their address, um, can get the shirt. I'll also give them a free digital copy of Companion because it came with the movie. And I don't need the digital copy, so you can just take that. But there's one rule with this, is that it's got to be shipping within the United States, because as you may know, right now tariffs are crazy, and I don't want anything to do with international shipping. And I'm sorry to anyone international who's listening to this. It's just the way of the world right now. So, anyways, I will say a catchphrase later on. You send me that catchphrase. You send me the size of your shirt and your address, and you'll get a one of a kind shirt that no one else has. I mean, I don't know anyone else who in their right mind would wear it, even. So,
It's a pretty funny shirt.
yeah, no, I love it. Don't get me wrong.
Super
But
goofy. If you want a picture of
no, wait, no, wait. We'll We'll get there. It's nothing bad. Don't worry. Before anyone thinks anything too much, but I
It
wanted to
gives off
shock.
King of the Hill vibes. That's all I'm
Okay,
saying.
see, there you go. That's not bad. Okay. So with that said, let's move on to the real business here. Um, whereas me and Andrew would normally kind of like ramble about music and movies, I think Janice and I, we've talked about it. We watch all the same movies together. We have been watching those John Carpenter movies, but we're not going to talk about that right now for maybe spoiler reasons that I'm not going to say any more of. You can infer that for what you will. Instead, I am going to say we're just going to jump into some music. Then we'll probably just go straight to companion. Um, today, the day we're recording this is Sunday, April 13th. On April 12th was a record store day. Now, I bring this up because usually on record store days I haven't really cared too much, but this particular record store day had one of my favorite albums of all time. That's never been pressed on vinyl release, and I'm lucky enough that Janice and the kids were like up for this. We went on an adventure to try to find this album. So this album is Harvey Danger's King James version, um, and it's like the lesser known album of a band that's like considered a one hit wonder from the '90s. This is a 2000 album. I love this album. I think it is brilliant. It's amazing. The lyrics are awesome. It was like indie rock, like your favorite indie rock artist's favorite indie rock record from before indie rock was a thing. And there's only 1,000 made, and I called all the record stores in Eugene. Of course, none of them had it, even though these guys are from the Pacific Northwest. Shame on you, record stores from Eugene.
They're not cool
Uh,
enough.
they like I'll call them. They'll be like, "Hey, we really like that band, but we didn't get any copies." I was like, "How much do you really like this band?" It's I don't know. It's probably not their fault. Uh, but I do want to be someone to be angry about. Um, yeah. So the closest store to us here that got a copy, one copy, is in Corvallis, and that's about an hour drive. And they opened up their doors at 8. I got Janice and the kids woken up, ready to go. We left at like 7:15.
So early.
Yeah, and we drove down to Corvallis, and I got in a gigantic line. Like, luckily enough, Janice like covered for me. She like watched the kids. She went to a bakery. She took them to a park, and I'm just standing in line waiting for this one record on the hopes that I get there. Um, and like of course, by the time I get to the front and I get in, it's gone. And so this whole entire hour trip, didn't get the record. But it was a good trip, and I did end up going to a second record store looking for it. I also got in line for their opening. They also did not get the record. However, I did get some records, and that's really what the point of this story comes down to. Is that first off, record store day and the commodification of rare vinyl is really frustrating when you actually love an album and you actually want that album. Like I'm all about making random collector stuff. That's cool, but when you have an album that's never been pressed before and the release is a record store day release,
Hmm.
gotta cut that out because this one hurts. This one's the one that I for anyone who worked with me at Dimple Records, like I'm sure everyone had these art titles that they would do. I would go into Lucid every morning, which was the POS system that would inventory to, and I would type in the name of this album just to see if there was any news. And of course, there never was because no one cared about this album other than me. But apparently, as soon as it released for Record Store Day, everybody's a fan. Copies go for
Yeah.
like $200 online now. It's scalpers, I think
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun with scalpers lately. They make everything more expensive.
I know. It was such a bummer that you couldn't get it because we did take that whole trip, for that very specific thing, but it still ended up being a fun day and you still got your record like
Yeah.
online at the
Mm-hmm.
end, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
So it's pretty sick. Yeah, and it was a great day. I won't go too much into the family stuff, but the family had a great time. Super fun. Um,
and I just love
and
doing weird things with our family.
yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice, and everyone's really up for it. So yeah, anyway, I did end up getting one record straight day release. It was the 13th Floor Elevators Houston Music Theater Live from 1967. I'll talk about that real quick, but it's not going to be a lot. So 13th Floor Elevators, Rocky. I'm not 100% sure if it's Rocky or Rocky. Rocky Erickson's band, fantastic psych rock band. This is one of those record store day records that you buy and you think it's going to be good, and then you listen to it and you're like, it's just a live album that's kind of incomprehensible. And I run into these issues with record store day releases. Is why I kind of stopped paying attention to a lot of them, is because they're just live records from somewhere random in time, and the recordings aren't great, and you don't know what you're getting. This is kind of one of those. It does sound okay. The mixing wasn't bad, but like it's not great either. So hit or miss. I got some non-record store day stuff too. Like I got this Anthrax album, Fistful of Metal. Now this is early Anthrax. Now I don't know anyone. If you weren't around during like the VH1, MTV random documentary era, not era.
I love that era.
It was a lot of fun. Anthrax was a band that was listed as like one of the big four of metal, and I don't know that they earned that. I think they just always had their bassist with the cool, really long beard on all these videos saying that, yeah, we were the big four. It was like Metallica, Anthrax. I think like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. Um,
Yeah.
I had always wondered why, and I didn't know much about Megadeth except for Madhouse and their cover of "Bring the Noise" with Public Enemy. I love that song, by the way. That's so cheesy, but it's so good.
Everyone bring the noise. That
No,
one?
no, that's quite right. This one's the "Turn It Up, Bring the Noise." Um,
Oh,
you would
okay.
definitely know it if you heard it. But yeah, so this album it's awesome. It is awesome. I was listening to it just earlier today even, and the only way I can describe it is it's got some of the most kick-ass riffs and like drums and just this awesome metal beats and some of the stupidest lyrics. I swear you could take the lyrics to this album and you could make a movie that would be as cheesy as Commando immediately. And the machismo is there.
Oh God.
Like I there's a song about jet fighters and he's like raising octaves in his voice to sound like a jet fighter that's flying higher, higher, higher. But the chorus says jet fire, cold killer stab in the back.
Oh God. That's so
Like,
cheesy.
like, and it doesn't get better than that. The rest are like, it's the night time, it's the time to fight, like
But it's like awesome cheesy.
it's so awesome. That's the hard part for me to explain. Like they're bad, but they're so cool. It's like Commando, it's a kind of a bad movie. Like the acting's awful, but it's so damn cool it doesn't matter.
I'm getting visions of you with black wig and black eyeliner
Yeah.
singing
Yeah.
that song.
Now, if I could, I, I,
Flashback.
I, I think the lead singer's name is Ian Scott. Now, I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that. But he has an interesting voice because he can belt it. Like he can hit octaves that you shouldn't hit, and he can hold those notes. But on the other end, his range doesn't hide how kind of
Mm,
like terrible he sounds a little bit. At least on this record, I
um,
can't speak to Anthrax as a whole. That wouldn't be fair for me to do. This is their first album, so maybe he got like a little bit more nuanced or better. But like he's definitely like a ton of range and almost no tone.
and that's what you like about him, right?
Oh, I mean, I like shitty singers. I think we've
Yeah,
talked about that.
exactly. Exactly. That's the difference. Is I love like very good, like smooth, I don't know, probably super trained singers, and you
Hmm.
appreciate the like raspiness and the mess ups that people do. And I appreciate that because I never considered that before.
I just find it like it shows that like the bar of entry to this music style is very low. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be classically trained to get into this as long as you got the passion. Um,
Yeah.
Fistful of Metal, 10-inch. It comes also with Armed and Dangerous. Armed and Dangerous is some of the cheesiest stuff I've ever heard. I think I really appreciate this early Anthrax for how cheesy they were willing to go. This is the perfect music to just pump you up no matter how stupid it is because you were like, wow, heck yeah, jet fighter stab you in the back. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. You're just into it. So throw it on next time you're running if you've never heard it. It's
Yeah, I
called
really
Fistful of
appreciate.
Metal.
Yeah, we were listening to that yesterday and it was awesome. Dino and Arlo were super into it too.
Yeah, it's always fun when the kids dance. And then I also got this album, Nails. You Will Never Be One of Us, which is just like they're listed as grindcore, and I guess like the sound is pretty heavy like grindcore, but they sound so much like a hardcore band. They don't have like a lot of moments of just sheer deviation from the script, which is what I would consider grindcore. Grindcore gets like abrasive, nasty noise, and that's all it is for a second. You're like, "Oh," you know,
Yeah,
that might not make sense to anybody, and I
you hear
apologize.
music very differently than most people, so
Uh, this album is so heavy, and like I had never listened to it before, but I loved the Nails release from last year, Every Bridge Burning, so I decided to grab this one. And I listened to it as I'm doing dishes, and the whole entire time, that as soon as it comes on, I'm just dancing, I'm just head bobbing, I'm just moving. um Nails, You'll Never Be One of Us, check out that album. 10 songs, 21 minutes. These songs are short, they're a minute and a half, a minute 45, but they hit so good. And then the
dang.
final thing I have to say about this whole ordeal is that I did end up ordering the Harvey Danger King James version online. Now, I want to be very clear, I did not pay scalpers prices for it. I did end up buying it from a record store that broke street date. I won't name them because I appreciate them very much. And I got it for okay prices. The prices online from the scalpers are ridiculous, and I think it's something like 10% of the records are already up online being sold. Sucks. Don't do that, please, anyone.
Yeah, like you literally saw people come out of that record store and like were taking pictures right when they
hmm
stepped out, right? And like
hmm
trying to post it on eBay and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's just it's what makes a hobby like this not fun. Is it's any hobby like this, and like we talk mostly about movies, and movies are kind of the same thing. You can get Blu-rays, and it's hard to find some of these with slip covers, and people just buy them just to sell them, and that's not fun. So please don't do that. But the Harvey Danger King James version is just one of the most phenomenal albums I've heard. I've loved it since I was probably 17. It came out in either I think it was the year 2000. Um and it wasn't a mega hit like their first album, so they broke up afterwards. They released a couple other things, but they broke up in 2009. Um and it makes me, on one hand, really sad that it was so hard to get this album because there was people actually wanting it. But on the other hand, the fact that people actually want this album, if this is kids finally finding this album and listening to it, and not just people like me who've been waiting 20 years for this, that
Hmm.
makes me so happy. Like, give this album some notoriety. It is so good. It has one of my favorite songs of all time, and I can't explain exactly why. I think it just like it points me out to my soul. Pike Street Park Slope. Check it out. Very slow song.
And
Um,
what's that super famous song by them?
Flagpole Sitta. So
Right.
that's like, I'm not sick, but I'm not well, and I'm gonna save
I
everyone else their
really like that
eardrums.
song.
It's a great song too. Um, Check it out. This is one of those 10 out of 10 albums for me. I won't make everyone listen to me gush about it too much. Um, and as a matter of fact, people have been listening to me gush for a minute. Janice, I hear you want to talk about a
I
release.
do. Yeah, next time we'll just camp out in front. We'll get there at 6 p.m. the night before, and then we'll definitely get that album that you want.
We'll, we'll be second in line, and the guy who's first in line will still get it somehow.
Probably true. Dang it.
I'll be
Um,
like, "Hey kids, you wanted to take a camping trip? I have one for you." Uh,
I probably should have had Dino sneak to the front of the line.
he could have gone in. He's like, "That's my dad in there," and just bought it for me.
Oh my God, that would have it. It's like we have a few years, but we'll get to that. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a minute about a song that I recently heard. I am not super like, I'm not like always searching for music like Nick is. I wish I was. I just don't have a ton of time. And as like, well, Nick doesn't have a ton of time either, but it's just not like one of my priorities really. But when I do find good music that sounds good to me, I always like to take note of it. So last week, I was on YouTube and I stumbled upon surprisingly, a Miley Cyrus song. I actually have never heard any of Miley Cyrus's. I mean, I've heard her songs, like the top hits, but I've never really listened to any of her albums. Um, and I heard this song called End of the World, which came out a little bit over a week ago. And it's off of her upcoming album called Something Beautiful. And I don't know, I was just really drawn into it, which I was surprised by. And I've always really enjoyed like the raspiness of Miley Cyrus's voice, but for some reason I just can't get the picture of Hannah Montana out of my head when she's singing. And so I was really like, I enjoyed this song, I enjoyed the tune and the beat and like just kind of the upbeat vibe of it. And sort of like it had like it was super disco influenced. Um and I don't know, you kind of visualize like sparkles and like feathered hair, and that's very much what her music video was like. Um so I was just trying to like set Hannah Montana apart from this song because I like really enjoyed it, but I feel like that kind of gets in the way sometimes of me like actually being able to fully enjoy Miley Cyrus's music. But yeah, I really liked it. I mean, I'm somebody who I really like kind of like old soul, like funky, I'd say like disco music. I don't know. I grew up listening to oldies music, um, like Diana Ross and Whitney Houston and Marvin Gaye, Sam Cooke, and just like the Bee Gees and a bunch of other artists out there. And I think that this song kind of gave me that nostalgic feeling of like what I heard on the radio as a kid in the back of my dad's Oldsmobile, you know? So yeah, I just really appreciated it. And online it's described as hypnotizing and glamorous, which I would say is pretty accurate.
Was didn't she show up to that award show with the feathered hair, like looking totally 70s?
Oh yeah, she's totally been going like full blown 70s vibes, like with her feathered hair and like the sparkly bodysuits and almost like this cloudy aesthetic. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like a cloudy type of aesthetic. And Sabrina Carpenter is doing a lot of disco type music too, so I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of just popular right now, like it's coming
Mm-hmm.
back. Um, and I'm like I'm really appreciating it in the newer artists.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I never watched Hannah Montana, so like that was never a thing for me. I know people like really despise Miley Cyrus for some reason. Pop music's not my deal, but I don't know anyone who can listen to that one song. It's the Flowers song.
I like that
Ask me.
song.
Well,
I
no, I
like
mean,
it.
I don't know how anyone can listen to it and not get it stuck in their head.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like it is so catchy. I heard it all the time when I was working at the dentist.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think the with the Hannah Montana thing, like that's kind of my issue with it is I was already older, like in high school when Hannah Montana came out. So like I wasn't watching Hannah Montana, you know, I was more like the Lizzie McGuire era. If you know, you know, that's so Raven. So Hannah Montana came out when I was older and my niece was like watching Hannah Montana. So now sometimes when I'm like listening to Miley Cyrus, I'm like, oh God, like, you know, she's a teeny
Hmm.
bopper from my niece's era, but I actually appreciate her, and I always have. And I like how kind of outspoken she's always been on like important human rights and that kind of thing. She's just so authentically herself, and she don't give a fuck about nothing. So I
Oh
don't
yeah.
care.
No, I
So
mean that's
yeah,
what's up.
maybe I'll get this album and get into it. I mean, you know me, I've always kind of liked pop music anyway. Like, yeah,
No shame in it. Like
I need to
we
embrace that side of myself more.
it's the me and Andrew have talked about. It's the poptimism, you know.
Poptimism. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. That's there's no shame in liking pop music. Um,
Mainstream pop. Yeah.
even mainstream, it doesn't matter. You love what you love.
True.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So here's the point where I'm going to tell you guys the phrase. I didn't make you wait too long. The phrase is "stay tuned." So again, you send me that phrase at additional crew on Instagram or additional crew film review on Gmail. Okay, excuse me. Additional crew film review at gmail.com. You can send an email there if you don't have an Instagram. The size of your shirt and where I would be sending it, and you'll get a one of a kind shirt. The film
Very,
code for companion, and yeah, that's it. I don't have a lot more. Uh,
very one of a kind.
yes, yes. So yeah, I don't, because we're not talking about the John Carpenter films, and I haven't watched any movies. Janice, I hear you watched a movie though.
Yes, I did. Movies are not something I watch very much of either. I'm usually just watching true crime, but last week I decided to. I mean, I watch a lot of movies with you mostly, but when I'm like alone, I don't really watch a lot of movies. But I just so happened to give a movie a try last week, and I watched Kind of Pregnant with Amy Schumer and Will Forte, and it was actually funny. Like the previews didn't look super funny. I thought it was gonna be cheesy. Um, but I think a lot of it was just like the comedic timing. But anyway, basically, it's about Amy Schumer pretending that she's pregnant to get attention. Like the basic idea of it sounds super cheesy. You know, I don't know. If you know Amy Schumer, you kind of know what to expect. Um, but it wasn't exactly what I was expecting, I think. I think Amy Schumer has definitely toned it down a lot. And I mean, I appreciate every aspect of her comedy, but it was just kind of funny seeing her in a different role, like as this lady who's pretending to be pregnant and like hanging out with a bunch of other pregnant women. Also now knowing that she's a mom to, a young child just like us. And then her and Will Forte's, that's her love interest in the movie. And their chemistry is super on point. Like in the movie, basically, I was kind of like wishing that they were together in real life just because their chemistry is so good together and they're so funny together. Um, and yeah, it was just like a package deal kind of because, yeah, like I said, you don't really know what you're going to get sometimes with like Amy Schumer movies, but I think that pair really made it like come to life and it made it pretty funny. And I feel like for me, like it takes a lot sometimes to make me laugh at something or like that my humor can be like too specific or um like I enjoy, I don't know, a combination of lighthearted and vulgar, which I think Amy Schumer provides, but it also just wasn't like too over the top like vulgar, and with Will Forte there it kind of balanced it out. And it just, yeah, it was a good time. I recommend.
Wonderful. If you could throw an arbitrary review rating out of 10, what would it be?
Hmm.
I know I have to put you on the spot like that, but I have to. That's
I
my
know, I
that's my
know. I'll give it a 7. Yeah. And that's solely just based on the comedy and like the chemistry. I wasn't really like super paying attention to the way it was shot and that kind of stuff, but it's also a comedy movie, so
mm,
it's so much heavily relies on like how funny it is and the comedic timing and stuff. So I would give it a 7.
sure. Okay, that's a pretty darn good score. Did you watch anything else, or is that what we got today?
No, nope, that's all I have.
Alrighty, now let me mess with my camera for a second. There we go. Fixed. I was getting a little blurry there. All right, so let's go ahead and let's jump into the film that we're going to be talking about for the most of this. Now, I guess right before we start this, I am going to say we're doing a little bit of a different setup here, so there's more structure in the way we're talking about this movie as opposed to what we normally do, which is like freeform, whatever the hell we're thinking, we just say. Janice and I are going to try and kind of follow the rubric structure that I posted. So we'll be talking about specific parts. Now, if you end up hearing this and you're like, well, I don't like it when it's structured, I like it when you just say things, send me a message, let me know, because that sort of feedback's really good. But we're gonna give this a shot. We're gonna see what happens here. And once again, we are talking about a weekend getaway with friends at a remote cabin turns into chaos after it's revealed that one of the guests is not what they seem. That is, of course, the movie Companion. That is from earlier this year, 2025, directed by Drew Hancock, who has not directed a movie before this. He has directed some random television shows, I do believe, and music videos, but no films. So this is the debut. I feel like I said that word wrong. The debut show
Debut.
directing. Thank you. Gosh. Okay. The debut of Drew Hancock as a director. Um, and it's got a phenomenal cast. First off, we'll go ahead and talk about it. So Sophie Thatcher. We're gonna get there, guys. Trust me. Sophie Thatcher. She was just recently in Heretic. She's been in Yellow Jackets for a long while. Um, apparently she's also known for a movie called Prospect. I've never heard that, but either which way. And then The Boogeyman recently. So she's kind of like making her path in as a horror movie actress. And I would say that if she can keep up this rapid pace of like 2 movies a year, she's gonna be a big star quick.
Yeah.
Um, then we've got Jack Quaid, who also immediately after Companion came out had another film hit the movie theaters, Novocaine. Now Jack Quaid is as much of a nepo baby as you can be. He's got Meg Ryan as his mother and Dennis Quaid as his father. So you just got mega stars on both ends, and you can definitely see it. I've never watched Jack Quaid and thought, wow, this guy looks just like his dad. But in this movie, I feel like he looked just like his dad.
Totally. He had
Um,
his dad's eyes and his mom's mouth.
yeah, yeah, and it's interesting. It's if you've watched a lot of sci-fi or horror movies throughout the years, you've seen Dennis Quaid in a bunch of things because Dennis Quaid had
Yeah.
a penchant for choosing actually pretty good movies, including The Substance last year, which was my favorite movie of the year. Dennis Quaid is phenomenal at choosing what movies he's in. And, I'm not saying that Jack Quaid's going to learn something from him, but I'm saying the opportunities are there. And Companion is, without giving spoilers away for the rest of this review, a solid start. You've also got Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows, Harvey Guillen. He plays Eli in this. Lucas Cage is Patrick. Smile 2 is how I know Lucas Cage, and you called that out, Janice. I could not place my finger on where I knew this guy, and it was from Smile 2, just the same as last year.
He just has such a memorable face to me.
Yeah, he really does too. Um, and then I'm gonna call this guy out. There's no reason for me to do it, but I'm gonna do it anyways because I was trying for the hardest time to figure out who this guy was. The Deputy Hendrix. That guy's named Mark Menchaca. And no one
Mm.
else is going to care about this, but he was in this show, The Outsider, and I was trying so hard to figure out where I knew this guy's face, and he was in Ozark and The Outsider. Um, yeah, so I wanted to say that because I needed to get it off my mind.
I'm glad you did that.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone letting me do that. So let's go ahead. Let's start with the story of this film. Um, the story of this movie, and I'm going to give it real brief before we discuss more details, is that you have kind of the classical setup of friends going to a vacation house. um the house is owned by someone that they know but not like everyone really knows all that well, and owner ends up getting murdered. They find out Sophie Thatcher's a robot.
Hmm.
And normally you'd think like that would be the twist, that's the main twist of the movie, like, oh my gosh, she's a robot. But as advertising would have told you already in this film, you definitely know she's a robot. Like the
Yeah.
whole time, they're pretty clear about it. Like I think that maybe they wanted to pretend it's a twist, but when your picture has someone with their eyes widened over and it's called companion and everything is about her
Yeah.
being a bot, it's not a shock. Um, what ends up being a shock is that they had planned out this murder, uh, and there was layers upon it, and we end up with most of the people getting killed, and then another bot getting involved, and then Empathic's the robot company coming, and then everyone kind of disappearing except for Jack Quaid, Sophie Thatcher, and then we see Sophie Thatcher gain her independence and a
Hmm.
really cool robot hand. So that's like the basic outline of the story. Now, um, before I just like info dump anymore, what do you have any immediate thoughts about the story? Um,
You might have
do
to
you have
ask
any
that
immediate
again.
thoughts about the story? Yeah, that's fair. We are, in case I forget to edit this out, having some internet issues just because we didn't do the logistics of having two people recording in the same house very well before we started.
Yeah.
Um, but with that said, do you have any immediate thoughts about the story before I info dump too hard?
Any immediate thoughts about the story?
Hmm.
Um, it was definitely a whirlwind for sure. There was a lot going on that I didn't expect, and it seems like they covered a little bit of every genre. So if you're into that kind of thing and you want a little bit of horror, comedy, action, sci-fi, heist, um, I'd say give it a watch.
Yeah, and I'd say the story for me, because it's shot with the beginning kind of telling you already what's going to happen at the end, right? It's like you have that um the quote about how she feels knowing everything has changed for her immediately, and the times that she knew that is the first time she sets eyes on Josh, and then when she killed him, right? So you immediately know she's going to end up killing Josh.
Right.
So you know that from the beginning. So there's no like surprise on that. The surprise ends up being more in like the how it came to be that she killed Josh.
Hmm.
Um but also I think that this story is like a vessel for a lot of different messages here, and I'm sure I missed a few of them. I mean, like the easiest one I think to see right on its nose is that there's like a women's liberation message in this film, right? So like the robot ends up gaining liberation at the end,
Hmm.
but throughout there are like little messages made um, for Sophie herself gaining liberation.
Definitely.
And like with the whole entire setup being like a sexual assault on the robot.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't until I just rewatched, oh, well, I was rewatching the ending just to kind of refresh my brain today. And yeah, at first I wasn't really sure how I felt about the movie, because there was just so much going on. And like I said, there was a little bit of every genre. But as I was rewatching the ending, because to be honest, we watched it late the first time and I was dozing off. So I wasn't like as present as I wanted to be. So I rewatched the ending today, and I have so much more appreciation for the movie because I think that the whole message kind of came full circle for me. But I also feel like as a woman, I'm kind of seeing it through a different lens. And yeah, I definitely saw in there, it was like a story about a victim of abuse, basically, but she was a robot. So that was wild to me because I've seen a lot of Lifetime movies in my day, and I've seen a lot
Mm-hmm.
of these like
Mm-hmm.
true stories about things that actually happened to women being abused, and the things that their partners did to them to kind of maintain this sort of control over them. And I don't know. It was weird. It was like throughout the whole movie, I didn't really see that until we got to the end. And it kind of all came full circle in seeing the way that her partner treated her, even if she was a robot, right? Like he was just this guy who wanted complete control over her. And it was that type of guy who would be an abuser with all of these like traits of, wanting or narcissist and controlling and not liking it when his partner has her own opinions and that kind of thing. And I think obviously that's the reason why he wanted this robot as a companion was because she did and said whatever he wanted her to.
Yeah, and it was interesting because like the mechanisms of control in this film are like literally just like coding, right? Like she's coded to absolutely love this guy and want to be with him no matter what. But
Yeah,
like that's an easy vessel for ignoring like some of the truer, harder parts about um like this abusive relationship, right? Because like a lot of times the people who have been abused do actually love the person who's abusing them. That's the hard
yeah.
part. It's like that underneath underlying love is what keeps them in these situations. Whereas instead of having to describe that, they use she's coded to love this guy.
Hmm.
And that's an easier, quicker method, but I think it kind of gets to the same point. It's like it's not as easy as just saying, "Okay, we'll break up and leave all the time," you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
of course this isn't I don't think that this movie's setting out to explain every single part of this to you with nuance. It's very much not a nuanced movie. It's on the nose. It's like, yeah, here you go. Here's the thing about abuse, and then we go on. But I think that it was pretty effective in the way it used that. Like when
Yeah.
something terrible would happen, and he'd be like, "Well, don't you still want to be with me?" And she'd be like, "Of course I do. I love you. You're the best."
Yeah. It was just like the story of codependence, but one side was like a robot who couldn't help but be codependent. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he liked that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was really interesting. I really liked that.
I thought it was a pretty good it was a pretty good vessel for that message, and it worked really well. They made use of it. I did have a question that I don't think I ever really fully got answered. Maybe at the end, but I wrote down this earlier on. I said, "What is this robot's level of consciousness?" Um, which
Yeah.
like we can see that they may not know they're robots. I don't think that they knew they were robots, but like consciousness, I'm not going to get into that. It's too complicated of a thought. But what is this robot's level of consciousness? Like, do you think this robot had their own independent thoughts and feelings? Because it sounded like they did.
You're right.
And this is also another larger question that's been brought up in other forms of media. If they do have their own thoughts and feelings, then what really is the difference between the robot and the humans besides the programming? We don't have to answer that question here. Because that's much too big of a thought. But I just wanted to lay that out, that it really got in the back of my head that I was like, well, what is the significant difference here between her and these humans other than the fact that they say she's less than and therefore she is? And that's where I think we go back a little bit to like the women's liberation and like any equality movement, really, is that she's not equal even though she has all of the parts that make up the other person.
Right.
They're
Like the
just
other,
organized a little different.
yeah, like the other person still has that control over
Yeah.
her
Mm-hmm.
through their phone, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
another whole interesting thing about the movie, which I found wild and I think is eventually probably something that will be somewhat true, is we'll have robots where at the click of our finger with our phone, basically we can like change the robot's personality or change their level of intelligence or the color of their hair or the color of their eyes and that kind of thing. Um, and yeah, so with the owner, Josh, having that phone, he just had so much control over her. And yeah, I don't know. It was crazy though because throughout the movie she did seem like she had a lot of emotion and thoughts. I think especially there's a lot of scenes where he's doing things to her that are clearly uncomfortable and causing her pain, and you can see in her eyes, right? Her There's a lot of acting in Sophie Thatcher's eyes. Like even though she's this robot, her eyes are telling so much about what she's feeling. So yeah, like the scene where he's causing her pain, like by lighting her hand on fire, and he tells her to put her hand over the fire, and she can't do anything but that, right? Because she has to do what her owner tells her to do, and she is just like tearing up so bad, and I feel bad for her, and I can see like she has so much more inside of her than just like this robot. So I don't know. That's a really good question, but I don't think they don't really explain their level of consciousness, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think they maybe they could have, but it's neither here nor there. And it also like comes to this like idea of control is what makes people feel like they are more than or less than, right? And that's all it comes down to is who has control. I also really like in this throughout the story, the humans are the sociopathic ones who don't really care that much about each other or the robots, and the robots
Yeah.
seem to be far more empathic despite the fact that they are robots. Um so like I'm sure that there's a message there about how we're losing grip of ourselves and yet we're programming in empathy into other things where we don't have it anymore for ourselves.
Oh my gosh.
Um
Yes. And this was something I was reading about this too, is
mhm.
how, eventually, well, we're already starting to use artificial intelligence as something that we are finding companionship in, right? Like I have a friend who recently broke up with somebody, and he was literally talking to AI to try to get through it and to figure out like his own feelings and emotions. So I think we're like, yeah, we're getting one step closer to that.
it the your version of the future that has to occur for this movie to happen doesn't seem so far-fetched at all. Um yeah, so I think that as far as the twists go, going back to the story a little bit, I think they were pretty easy to see happening. I was happy that the her being a robot didn't end up being the main twist because I was really going to be upset at the marketing director if that was the main twist.
Yeah.
Um, her organs and the way they're delineated and how that works out was pretty good. Now, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit because we kind of skipped over her getting out and her getting caught by the cops. And then her brilliant decision to switch her language to German once she gets control of the phone was awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, and just I guess I should go back because I'm ignoring Patrick in all this, and Patrick is the other robot, and the other robot I think has a lot more to do in this movie and a lot more poignancy in this movie than I think he might be given credit for. So Patrick is the older model robot that Eli falls in love with. Now Eli is a human, Patrick is the robot. Um, and Eli falls in love with him, but is using him to track down the other robot. Eli has not let Patrick know that he's a robot, but Patrick, of course, has found out as we find through the movie. And Patrick is used in a lot of different ways near the end when his programming has changed and he is turned into just like mindless action, violence, killer bot. Um, he basically becomes the T-2000 from the Terminator 2 movies. If you've seen that, like the shot
Oh
of
yeah.
him in the cop outfit just mirrors Terminator 2 so well. It's hard to see it as anything other than an homage. But so he plays a role in this as well because he finds out about the love and like he is going along with it and he's providing love and then he is turned into an action of just ultimate violence. But throughout all this, the robots are continuing to be used. They're then put against each other
Aggression
and
level 100.
yeah, which is used pretty funny when he tells when the friend Kat is trying to get out of the house, and then Josh asks the robot to stop her, and he just stabs her in the gut.
Yep, that's what happens. Like he completely forgot he set that robot to aggression level 100.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, the robot wouldn't do that. We already saw how the robot acts normally. So again, humans are being the sociopathic ones, are being crazy. Um, but Patrick Bot does happen to give like a little bit of a glimpse into what the actual feelings of forced love are like. So like he is in a completely
Mm,
powerless situation, and as opposed to just being like, this is where it gets a little
yeah.
more complicated, right? Because he's not just a female in the situation where it's like a female male dynamics. He's a male in a situation with male male dynamics, right? And
Mhm.
he is forced to love. And I really enjoy that quote where you can't tell if it's supposed to be romantic, but it does sound like pain. Where they're like, "Well, what does the love feel like inside of you?" And he's like, "It's like fire, and it burns forever."
Yeah.
Because it sounds kind of sweet if you just read the words, but when you watch it with the way they act it out, it sounds awful. It sounds like it is not fun. Love for these bots is not a good place to be.
Yeah, and I feel like that goes back to the kind of idea we're talking about people who are abused or feel trapped in relationships. Like that probably explains what a lot of those people feel like, right? And I actually wrote that quote down because I really like what he said there. And basically, he said, "Love feels like pain. Like the inside of my body is on fire."
Dang.
When was that? Um, when Iris asked him what
I
love
think
felt like?
that was when Eli asked him what love felt like, but then Iris said the same thing later. Um,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
they both felt the same way, but that was when Eli was in the forest and like confessing his love and the fact that he was a robot, and he's like, "What
Yeah,
does it feel
for
like for you?"
yeah, for me, like when he said that quote, I felt uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel like that's what love should feel like when he said that. I was like, that's clearly an unhealthy feeling. I don't know. Like it feels like pain. I don't know. Like I just don't feel like that's what love feels like. So I kind of sensed, yeah, he just felt forced, which I
Hmm.
think is another sign that these robots obviously have more like thoughts and consciousness than we think. I think that's kind of a way that they were trying to show that these robots were slowly becoming more
I
human-like.
100% now. So Sophie Thatcher's character Iris eventually earns her freedom by being shot in the head because that breaks her Wi-Fi connection, so she can then move about the country on her own without Josh there. Um, I have some questions in this story, and I don't know how serious they are because, as a most part, for the structure itself, I think they did pretty well in the structures. I think it was like the appropriate amount of twists. I think it was the appropriate amount of like tension brought through it. But I do have a couple questions. At what point did her, did Sophie's main purpose switch to completely survival and no longer just being to stay with Josh? Because I know at
Mm,
some point she was trying to get back to the apartment so she could get clean and get away from the situation so that way she could continue staying with Josh because that's what her programming told her to do. And then at some point during the crop chase scene,
mm,
I feel like it had switched over, but I don't really know what happened to make her switch it over. Maybe the phone app, but I don't feel like that was the answer. They didn't really show it. So I was like, at what point did she stop trying to stay with Josh and did she want to get out? Because she had the call with him where she's like,
yeah.
it's not you, it's me. And she was breaking up with him. But that feels like it was antithetical to her programming. And I just wonder how that happened.
I felt like it was pretty early on, maybe like when she, well, not early on, but right after she killed Sergey, when she was tied to that chair, and he was basically telling her that like he was breaking up with her, and um, yeah, I don't know. She basically, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
No, that's
Um,
fair.
but basically, he admitted to her that she was a robot. She didn't know she was a robot.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I felt like it was in that moment
Yeah,
when
and
she found out she was a robot.
that makes sense to me, like on an emotion level, right? But how did she break her programming? And I don't think that that's answered in the
Mm,
movie, right? And
yeah,
maybe it is with the phone, but I didn't see it, and so that was something that I was a little like, okay, they didn't explain that very well. Now, ultimately, did it matter more than just me saying this and like thinking about it too hard? No,
yeah. It
but
was almost like I feel like that happened after she got restarted because she got like restarted again during the movie and so like every time a robot gets sent to a person and is like brand new and they get restarted, they like look this person in the eye and that becomes like their person, their companion. So I think at some point in the movie she got restarted or reprogrammed. It may have been after that ethics team came or something and they restarted.
empathics, yeah.
Empathics came and she got restarted, but I don't think she had anybody to like um, hyper focus on or like anybody to attach to because that's when she kind of became her own person, I feel like. And I
That's a
don't
good question.
know the
Yeah.
other details of that, but I do remember when she was in the back of that van, right? And then she like popped up and she was basically like her own person and she was like doing her own thing. So she didn't really need a person after that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder like why. I wonder if that was just because the chip in her brain got busted at that point or what.
Yeah, there was a lot of I feel like inconsistencies in that area for sure. Because I was wondering the same thing after she like blew her own mechanical brain out. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, she's easy to fix. We just got to go charge her up." And I'm like, "Well, did you guys even fix the stuff that was in her head? Because when she was in the back of that van, she was basically charging while she was in the back of that van, and she came back alive. So definitely some inconsistencies there."
Yeah. Another question I have, and this one doesn't matter as far as the plot goes, but I couldn't help but thinking about it. Did the robots eat? Do you remember watching any robots? Did they actually eat food? Because I remember in Patrick's memory he was eating food,
Oh,
but and he was
oh,
making food for everybody, but I don't remember seeing him seeing him eat or Sophie or excuse me, Iris eat.
so you actually remember Patrick eating because I don't remember that.
It was in his memory where he was stepping on the dinosaur tail. He was eating, but that was just a
Oh,
memory, right?
yeah.
Um, and then
I
I remember making food, but I don't remember him actually eating after that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a detail I do not.
It
I
almost
don't.
certainly doesn't matter, but
Yeah,
again, I was just like I hyper focused on it when they were talking about they're talking about like where all the stuff was, and they're like, yeah, well, her operating system and her memory and everything is stored in in the abdomen area, right? And I was like,
yeah,
in the back of my mind when they said that, I was like, well, then where's her stomach? And if she doesn't have a stomach, then does she eat? And if she does, then where does it go?
yeah. I don't remember. So you actually remember a clip of Patrick taking bites out of something, chewing on
I
something?
I think I do. I think like
Okay,
he
someone.
grabs something and takes a bite during the memory, right as he's stepping on it, but
Yeah,
um
I imagine as a director and movie maker, it's hard to kind of make sure every single thing is in line.
yeah.
But you have
No
seen more
joke.
movies than me, and you're more of like a critic, so you probably pay more attention to that than me.
No, and realistically, even if they didn't care about it, this is something that doesn't matter. Um I couldn't stop thinking about it. Um
Mm, that's good to know. Yeah, go ahead.
then like little details that I did enjoy also in the story were that they had really good continuity with the blood stains on the couch. As like Cat got stabbed on the couch and like bled out on it, then on all the rest of the shots, the blood kept getting a little bit darker when the couch is showing the couch.
Wow, I
Um,
didn't notice that. Speaking
it's
of
the oh go.
blood, though, speaking of blood, I do want to mention that I like. the way that they made Iris look, like how covered in blood she was after she killed Sergey. Like it just looked
Super
so
brutal.
horrific
Yeah.
when she came in, and
Yeah.
I don't know, there was a lot of artistry in the way that they made her look because it was just like so brutal looking, but it was also really cool looking at the same time.
Right. I don't have a ton more about the story itself. I do want to say like I think it was a pretty effective show of like an abusive relationship and like how escaping that can be hard and take time and like have a lot of collateral damage. Um, but it is possible at the end. Like it had a pretty good message as far as that went. Um, do you have anything else in particular you'd like to talk about in the story that maybe I missed?
Um, I don't know. I guess the only thing I would say is it was interesting how much I felt like I related to the robots more than anybody, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a common thing for a lot of viewers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how much empathy I had for the robots compared to the humans.
Yeah.
And I also I just want to mention like about Josh's character because he is just so unlikable. Like he really is like I don't know, I really hated him. I hated his character in that movie. And I think I don't know if you felt the same way, but I hated his character and I also kind of hated how much he lacked humanity, even in just like his facial expressions and like his voice and the way that he operated. He seemed more robotic than everyone else to me. Um, and I don't know if that's because he was a bad actor or if that's because of the way that they were trying to portray him. Um, but there was just such a lack of like, I felt like humanity in his character. And I think that made him even more unlikable to me. So, and I don't know if they did that on purpose or not, but I don't know if
Yeah.
you felt the same way at all.
No, that makes sense. I didn't think about the him being more robotic aspect prior to this. But like he is very unlikable. Now what like you get from him is that he's just an entitled dude, and he like doesn't do any of the work on his own and still wants to reap benefits, and that's kind of like a pretty unfortunate position to be in, where it's like I'm owed something, I'm owed something, I'm owed something. Like I need this, I need this, to the point where he hatches up like just one of the worst heist plans that I've ever seen in a film. Like it's not a good heist plan. Um he doesn't even know where the robots store their memory, or that they upload it to a server or that they get checked by empathics.
Yeah.
He doesn't know any of that. So like I do appreciate the fact that they didn't come out with Josh and be like, here's your mastermind plan. They're like, here's your half brain scheme that is going to completely backfire because you're kind of stupid, and
Yeah.
you're lucky that this girl's programmed to want to be with you because you suck otherwise.
Yeah. He really was just such a sucky, unlikable guy.
Hmm.
And I hope, I don't know, maybe my feelings will change about him, but um, even in interviews I've seen with him, he kind of comes off that way. So maybe that's just how he is.
Damn.
I know I
Damn.
shouldn't
Throw
say
shit at
that.
Jack Quaid.
I know. I'll just stop talking now.
No, you're good. I don't know. Maybe you need to watch Novocaine, that other movie he's in, just to see what it's like. Um, because that
Yeah.
one just came out too. I can't remember Jack Quaid from other things. I've seen him in other things. I know that, but I don't know where else. I think that he's going to be used as a. I say this before watching Novocaine, but I feel like he's going to be used as a bad guy in a lot of things. He's unfortunately for Dennis Quaid, he's got that face now.
He does. And like I
Um,
said, to me, he looks just like Joshua Jackson.
yeah, and I feel like Joshua Jackson's used pretty in a similar role. He was in Jack Quaid was in one of the Scream movies. Was he the bad guy?
Oh, I don't remember. One of the newer ones?
Yeah, the one from 2022. So I think not Scream 7 or whatever that came out, but like the first of the reboots. Unimportant, but I think that he was one of the bad guys, or at least he was one of the main. He's got the face for it, is what I'm saying. A face for a good guy to hate.
Yeah, he does.
Um, yeah. So we'll move on a little bit here. So the next up, and I think story is going to be like the one that takes up the most of our time, anyways. But so we're going to move on to acting now. Acting is part of just how I grade films, but like with the acting in this film, I don't I don't feel like, besides the as you already discussed, like the physical acting of Sophie Thatcher and her ability to display emotions through just strictly her face.
Hmm.
I don't recall anything that either one blew me away or made me question the validity of this universe. Like everyone else did pretty well. Lucas Patrick, the robot Patrick, Lucas Cage Gage is his real name. But the Patrick the robot, he was also pretty good in as far as like changing up his body language when his aggressiveness got changed. And then going from
Yeah,
like lover bot to like killer bot pretty quick. Um,
right. Yeah.
Josh was hateable. Kat was obnoxious. Sergey kind of bothered me because he was so generically cliche Russian mobster. It was funny, but at the same time had absolutely zero depth and gave me no reason to be sad about his death because he tried to sexually assault a robot.
Right. He didn't
Um,
matter.
yeah, so acting is a quick one for me. I thought both Sophie Thatcher and Lucas Gage did great jobs, and then everyone else was pretty bad. And that actually speaks to what you were saying before, and maybe
Okay.
that was the point of it. Like the robots had a bunch of acting and emotion in their acting, whereas everyone else was just there to accomplish this task,
Hmm.
and we got almost nothing. I mean, I guess Eli, um, Harvey Guillen, he had some moments where he was sharing love. It's really hard for me to see him as anything other than Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows, and I think he kind of suffers from that a little bit. But I if that were the case, I think they did a lot better than I'm giving them credit for, because I really did only connect with the robots and not the people.
Yeah. And that's I honestly think that's maybe what they were going for, because I didn't
Hmm.
connect with the people at all either.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They did have. I've talked about this many times on these pods at this point. They did have one liner that really stuck. And after Sophie Thatcher kills Josh, she says, "Go to sleep, Josh." And that's a mixture of acting and direction, but I
Um,
have to call it out because it did happen and I did enjoy it. Um,
because she doesn't
yeah,
know what death is.
I think she does know. They just had to throw in the one liner. I mean, like it's there. You got to use it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I really appreciated yeah, Sophie Thatcher's acting and like you said, Lucas Gage.
Hmm.
I was watching some interviews with Sophie Thatcher, the whole cast really, and it sounds like Sophie and Lucas, the robots, were the kind of more physically demanding, the hardest roles to play, just because they had to change so much. In one of the interviews, Sophie says that she is most proud of the scene where she's speaking German, because she practiced it forever. Like all around her house, she was just speaking German to herself.
She was really speaking German.
Yeah, she was speaking. You didn't think she was?
I guess I didn't think about it. Good for her.
Oh, what else would it have been? Like just like AI or AI or a
AI,
voiceover.
a voiceover, who knows? Like, but I didn't even think about that. Of course,
Yeah,
she's
so
really
they
speaking German. That's awesome.
yeah, she was actually speaking German. She said she practiced it forever, like for days, weeks, months. And another thing that I saw is that the creative director, um, and all the people who are involved with like creatives and like acting and everything in general really were trying to they wanted to make sure everything was as real as possible, so they wanted to avoid like CGI as much as possible, which I know you always appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
They did use some, but yeah, anyway, I know we're talking about acting, so
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I didn't know that. Yeah, because that's really good. I really Sergey, Kat, Josh, they all kind of just sucked.
you know what
Um,
though, I think that Eli, I liked him. I thought he did a really good job at like portraying himself as this like super fun, like happy-go-lucky guy. But then you get in these moments where he's actually controlling over his robot, right?
mhm.
Like you like him, but then you see some of the moments where he's like, you can see he has control over his robot, not in like as an abusive way as like Josh, but like maybe more like mentally abusive to his robot. And I appreciated that he could act in a way that was like so broad. So he's so likable, but you could also see that he's like trying to manipulate this robot.
He doesn't let him know his
Yeah,
own nature, right? Like he hides his own nature from him. Something as base is like what he actually is. He's hiding it. I That's interesting. Again, it's another one of these thoughts I didn't have. Like, but it's like it's showing that more different types of people can be abusers rather than just the stereotypical.
I think Eli and Patrick's dynamic. um, I just appreciated their acting so much and their relationship. To me, they were probably, I don't know, they were more entertaining to watch than I think Iris and Josh's dynamic. And I think that's just because a lot of their interactions were unexpected. Like Eli was just kind of this happy-go-lucky, like positive guy who loved his robot, and Patrick was this robot who clearly loved his owner back, but as he was gaining more and more like understanding that he was a robot, you could tell he was becoming more and more uncomfortable with Eli's demands. And I don't know, it was just kind of happening subtly. I don't know if everybody would notice that, like as they continue to watch their relationship unfold in the movie. But um, yeah, their relationship was, as I would describe, sweet and creepy. It's like, oh, they're so sweet together, but
Feels like a pretty
it's
good
also a
description.
little creepy the way that Patrick treats him. So, or the way Eli treats him.
Well, it's interesting too. I think like an interesting like little side note into this is that Eli doesn't know Patrick knows he's a robot, but Patrick has figured it out. So that means at some point, even the robots can either be not forthcoming or even like more directly
Oh yeah.
secretive. And I wonder if that's like a protection mechanism for the robot. So maybe there's like even deeper things under the surface because Eli seems like a very likable character, but I think you're absolutely right. And this is something I didn't even pick up on is that there is definitely layers of abuse that are being shown there, right?
Yeah, and yeah,
I mean, can you imagine false memories being planted in your head? You're just being gaslit from the moment
that
you're
would be
created.
insane. Maybe that's just what's happening to all of us and we don't know it.
Literally. Oh man, you're
Maybe my
not
first
wrong.
memory of you isn't actually real. At the house. Oh my
I actually
gosh.
ate the pizza.
Oh my
We don't need
gosh.
to get into
And our
it.
first like kind of date was also at a Halloween party. Our first meet cute. So that's kind of funny because that's where Eli and Patrick first met was a
Right,
Halloween
right.
party.
That
We can
that is
relate.
true. That is true. That's actually an interesting parallel. Well, you didn't step on, or I didn't step on your tail because you didn't have a tail. I don't. I'd be real with you. I was kind of drunk. I don't
Oh yeah,
remember
it
the
was a
first things we
deer.
said to each other.
No, a lot of deers don't have tails.
No, I do remember you being a deer. I don't remember how the first conversation started. Anyways, we don't have to go
Yeah,
on that.
we don't need to talk about that night.
That's for a different podcast. So do you have anything else to talk about with acting? Because I don't. I want to say also that the cop who got my mind was a terrible cop.
Okay,
Just the
I'll
worst.
just say one more thing. So Sophie Thatcher throughout the movie, there was something about her that like really bothered me. And I think I mentioned that to you too. I'm like, I don't know, there's just something about her that's just so
Mm.
like kind of unlikable. And I think it's just like her monotone, like she's robotic, right? She's monotone. She doesn't seem very happy. Um, and from watching interviews with her, I just learned more and more that that's just kind of how she is, like that's her personality. And she's just like a weird person. So the way she portrays herself in this movie, as this kind of like weird, dark, like cute indie girl, from the interviews I've watched, she's just very much like that in real life too, and that's a lot because of her like own personal experiences. So I do appreciate her a lot more, and I don't know. I just feel like I relate to her a lot more after watching those interviews.
Yeah, and I think that that's also seen through her music.
Right.
She's got music. I actually went ahead and listened to it. She's got an EP called Pivot and Scrape that came out, and the album cover looks pretty like 2000s post hardcore, but it's Sophie Thatcher mixed with maybe like a little Bjork, but without the weirdness. It's very dark, is what I'm really trying to get at. It's black and white, looks super edgy. She could pass for
Yeah.
a scene kid in this album, and it's an alternative indie pop album that sounds like you'd expect. So I think you're on to something there. That this is just kind of the thing. And good news for everyone is that means she'll
Yeah, and
probably
she's been
keep doing horror
acting for a
movies.
long time. Like
Um,
she started at a really young age. She started when she was like 9 in this like play called Oliver, and she's basically been working ever since on her own accord, basically. Like she decided when she was like 9 or 10 years old that she wanted to be an actress. Her parents didn't force her into it. And so she basically grew up in like this acting world. Her parents would take her to auditions and they would take her to like plays that she wanted to be in, which is very much kind of what I wanted to do when I was younger. But it didn't last super long. But she like really stuck with it. And she is super weird because she grew up like around adults, basically, like at these plays and like musicals that she was in. And she started doing professional theater at like a super young age by choice. And so she's been working for a really long time. And I appreciate that in people when they have like sort of this internal motivation to like follow their dreams from such a young age. She's also like 10 years younger than us, so she grew up like online. She talks about how much like online world had influenced her life and like her well-being and her, you know, self-acclaimed weirdo-ness. And yeah, I appreciate her a lot more. This I could ramble on and on from all the interviews I've watched, but
yeah, totally. I just want to add in here that it doesn't appear that she's a nepo baby, so that's pretty cool. And she grew up in Utah
oh
and Idaho, which I was born and raised in Utah. Not Utah and Sacramento, like equal mix, right? Um, but young years in Utah, and it makes it so much more appropriate that she did the
yeah, she
movie
said her parents
Heretic
were
now.
actually her family was Mormon, but they weren't like
Yeah,
traditional Mormon. Like they were like we're Mormon, but they never went to church type of Mormon. Or they didn't force her to go to church. She said her mom went to church, but like she never her mom never like forced her. So her mom let her follow her dreams and go to auditions instead. But something else quickly I want to mention about these interviews I watched is I learned something about horror movies, which I didn't know, is a lot of actors in horror movies actually get sick when they're done filming. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, I learned that from an
I wonder why
interview
that
with
is.
her. She said that it's commonly known, like in the horror movie making community, like after you as an actor make a horror movie, you're probably gonna be down for like a week with some sort of illness because your body is using so much energy, like you're crying and you're screaming, and you're basically putting your body like through trauma, and it's super common. Like she
Huh.
said, after they got done filming this movie, basically the whole cast was sick for a week. Yeah,
That's, I mean, when you say it and the reasons, I guess it makes sense, but I never would have
right.
guessed that. So that's interesting. Huh. I wonder what like the actors in
Oh
Human
god,
Centipede were like afterwards.
horrid.
Was sick for 2 weeks,
Dear
and it
god,
wasn't
they were
just the
probably
poop in
sick
their
for a
mouth.
month.
Um, spoiler:
Thank
that's not our
god. I
next
watched
movie.
that at 8 a.m. with you once.
Should be.
Before work, why did
Yeah.
we
I
do
well,
that?
okay. I'm like morbidly curious to watch the second one. Um, okay. So let's move on to sound. Sound. There's a pretty strong soundtrack in this film. Um, I want to say the soundtrack is pretty good. I do like the soundtrack a lot. So the soundtrack also adds to like that Valentine's Day flavor that this movie had, because it came out, if not on Valentine's Day, then right
Hmm.
around Valentine's Day, is like a good Valentine's horror movie. And it had a lot of soul music in it. And I guess I wouldn't just call it soul. It was like soul slash 70s pop, and it fit very well, especially with the kind of pink colorings that they had and when those would show up. Now, if you ask me just to tell you what parts specific songs were coming on, I don't really remember exactly that well. But what I do know is that when they came on, they fit appropriately. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I like the
Mm.
soundtrack a lot. Also, the song with the Bee Gees, "Emotion," did have a female singer. I wasn't
Oh,
crazy. I thought I was crazy because as soon as the Bee Gees start singing, of course you know it's the Bee Gees, right? Like they have a very specific
yeah.
vocal sound. But Samantha Sang started that song. It's called
Right.
"Emotion."
I've heard that
Um,
song too a lot growing up,
and
but I don't remember the
yeah,
female
I
singer in
thought I was
it.
crazy.
Let me see. Yeah, I'm really interested in I obviously I love the soundtrack too. I can't name the songs off the top of my head, but
What one song specifically I will say real quick is "Iris"
yeah.
by the Goo Goo Dolls. That was played when Iris was getting delivered um to the door, to Josh's door. There's like a little bit more of a meaning to that song because Jack Quaid, his mom is Meg Ryan. She was in the movie City of Angels. City of Angels was the reason why the song Iris was written. Should say it more clearly. The Goo Goo Dolls wrote the song Iris for the movie City of Angels,
Okay. What?
which starred Jack Quaid's mom.
So was
Yeah, so I think that was a
that
reference.
song intentionally chosen for Companion because City of Angels had that song in it? That's what I want to know.
Um, here's what I'm gonna
Or
say.
is it a
I'm gonna say
coincidence?
yes, definitively
Okay.
yes. I mean they, like it could have been a coincidence, but I don't think so.
Wow.
I don't think so. You could choose any song. You didn't even have to have Iris to give her the
I
name
wonder
Iris. It
what
didn't even
scene in
matter,
City of
right?
Angels That would be crazy. Anyway,
I I don't remember City of Angels well enough. I saw it in a drive-in right before they showed Independence Day. It was City of Angels into Independence
I'm
Day, I
trying to
think.
remember because I
I
know
don't
Meg Ryan
remember
in City of Angels was a
City of Angels
doctor,
at all.
and I wonder if she was like a baby doctor. I can't remember because that would be crazy if she was like delivering a baby that just happened to be Jack Quaid in City of Angels. So maybe that was Jack Quaid's first acting role. I'm going too far. I'm going.
And
I'm
I'm
going too
definitely
far.
wrong. Yeah, and Independence Day was not released the same year as City of Angels, so I'm wrong about that. But I'm trying to remember what movie it was because I remember City of Angels came on, and I just didn't care about it at all because the other movie we were gonna watch was fantastic. But
I love the movie City
this
of
is
Angels, by the
very
way.
unrelated.
I love Meg Ryan.
And that's fair. What I'm saying about City of Angels right now is so unfair. This is like 7-year-old me talking.
Seven-year-old me loved it. Yeah.
Well, that's fair. I was like waiting for some horror movie or some like action movie, and I don't remember which one it was anymore. I swore it was Independence Day, but that can't be right because they're different years. So maybe there's like a Jurassic Park or something that came out at the same time. I don't know. It's unimportant. I'm gonna move on because I can't figure it out yet. I'll probably just shout it out later. Once again, if you want to win the T-shirt, the phrase is "Stay tuned." You send "Stay tuned" to at Additional Crew on Instagram or Additional Crew Film Review at gmail.com through email. Whoever gets there first, just send that phrase, your shirt size, and the address you want it to, and I will send a one of a kind shirt to you as well as the code for a digital copy of Companion. Um, and I'm just doing it here just in case you only listen to this because that's fair too. So, um, did you have anything else you wanted to say about the soundtrack or the
I
song?
don't think so. Yeah, it was super nostalgic. So, yeah, that's, I think, all I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely reminded me again of being in the back of my dad's Oldsmobile, wind blowing, and him listening to oldies music. So, if that's your vibe, that'll probably elevate the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it kept the movie lighthearted enough. It was definitely like a portion of like setting the tone that this movie's not ultra serious because you didn't have like these like terribly scary songs and you had like this more generic love sounding songs. And generic's the wrong word. These songs are awesome, but like it's giving that sort of flavor to it. So it's like, hey, this movie is not this ultra tense, high emotions horror movie. This is kind of tongue in cheek, and we'll use the music to show that. Okay, so now let's move on to editing and pacing. Um, Editing and pacing, if you want to think about it, is just more so like how did that movie feel? Did it have any extreme editing choices? Now, you didn't watch the movie Uzumaki with me. I'm bringing that up because if you would know exactly what I mean by extreme editing choices if you had watched that film. Uh they exist. What I will say in this film is that I don't really remember any
Mm-mm.
part dragging too much. It was a pretty lean runtime and it got through it well. I imagine they could have shaved off a little bit more, but like at an hour and 37 minutes, they didn't need to. They did what they wanted to. They
Yeah.
got there, they got out. Um and I appreciated it for it. The most intense editing choices I think I remember when they went back to the first
Mm.
memories, and that had one of the more effective laugh moments for me when Patrick's first memory was changed from Eli
Yeah.
to Josh, and it was the exact same otherwise. Like I think it was a good choice to include that scene, and I thought it was pretty funny. So the editing for me was solid. I can't say it was over the top well done, but it was solid. I don't have many complaints.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was pretty, to me, faster probably than I am usually what I usually go for in movies that I like give higher ratings, but I'm also one of those people that kind of likes those slow paced type of movies and stories. Um, and like I said in
Mhm.
the beginning, this movie was really trying to capture a lot of genres. So it had like horror, comedy, action, sci-fi, and heist, and other genres I'm sure that I'm not mentioning, romance. Um, and I learned that the director actually did that on purpose because he wasn't sure if this was going to be the only movie or last movie that he would ever direct or that would be this big. So he said that he always had like a love for movies in general, any type of movie, and he kind of wanted to pack everything all in one just in case it was his only chance ever. And I think he did a really good job at it, honestly. Like sometimes I felt like some parts of it were a little forced, like the heist part of it. You know what I mean? Like, like some of those genres that he decided to incorporate, I definitely felt like were unnecessary and they didn't really like add to or take away from the story itself. So it could have done without those things, but it was part of his like personal goal as a director to put those things in it. So I definitely appreciated that. And
Yeah,
I was definitely intrigued the entire time. So it didn't take anything away from me. And it was definitely fast paced, but yeah, I liked it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder like what the actual nature of the relationship between Kat and Josh was, but I don't think that ultimately the movie would have gained anything by adding scenes to explain that better.
Right, because there were like hints maybe at what
You know,
their
yeah.
relationship was, but
Hmm.
yeah, they didn't go into that.
Yeah, and I think about it, I'm like, would it have made Kat's death more impactful? Yeah, probably, but what would that have helped the movie overall? And then I think, nah, not really. So I appreciate that they didn't
Yeah, you're
include certain
right.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I feel like if they went too into it with Kat, yeah, it would have just taken away from the story itself. So I think you're right. I think they were really strategic about what they included and what they didn't.
Yeah, like if it didn't have to do with the robots, who cares, right?
Yeah.
Um so let's move on to our final category here. We are going to talk about cinematography and creativity. Um so cinematography, of course, just being shots, scene setups, that annoying term mise en scene, which we won't talk about because we use layman's terms in these here parts. And like so the first things first, I want to say every time that they used somebody's eyes to create a scene, it worked.
Yeah.
And just every time they turned off one of the robots and their eyes went white, it looked very cool and it set the tone for the scene. Every time the robots were waking up and wanting to create their love link, the blue and black eyes that they had were terrifying. And like maybe this isn't necessarily the point, but this love link process. Can you imagine just going for those blue and black eyes staring directly at you and forming a love link, quote unquote, to immediately
Yeah.
it looks like a
Yeah.
person's eyes, and now they're in love with you. Like that's got to be a
Oh
little
yeah. It
freaky.
looked freaky when it in
Um,
the movie.
mhm. So I appreciated that a lot. The other thing that I wanted to point out that I just loved was the slow motion gunshot scene. Um, it just looked really cool because like this is one of those few times where someone's getting shot and it's not bloods and gores and stuff. It's just robot parts coming out, and this is a good use of slow motion because they hadn't used it a lot. And I suppose I need to hit the final thing I loved a
Oh, I
lot,
was gonna
and that
mention
was the
that.
Terminator hand. It's just, I mean, it's just so cool, and it that was the time where I was like, oh, this movie really could just like segue immediately into the Terminator zone, and I would be so okay with that. Like, let's just move it on over. She meets up with Arnie from 30 years ago, and now they're all just fighting
Yeah.
humans. Because why not? Like, this is the movie where I'm like, Skynet maybe should have won. Um,
Yeah, I really liked that too.
but here's the hard part for me, and this is just for me. I think that I'm sure that there's a lot of different opinions out there. Aside from those moments, I don't know that the cinematography really
Hmm.
wowed me a ton. It wasn't bad, but it
Right.
wasn't extraordinary. Like I have a hard time thinking of any scenes that weren't those particular scenes and going like, wow, that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I was feeling the same way um, as I was trying to think about it and watch it again today. Yeah, I there wasn't anything that was, yeah, super struck me. Um, there were some scenes like at nighttime after, during all of the like action scenes and they're searching for Iris. There were some dark scenes that were kind of cool. The lighting looked cool and the fog behind them in the trees. Um, but those were probably the most visually interesting scenes to me. It didn't seem like they were trying to do a whole lot to like focus on the visuals of it. I did appreciate like the clothing. It wasn't like super over the top or anything like super, beautiful or striking, but they did a good job, I think, at dressing the robots in particular. The robots were definitely more fashionable than the humans. And I'm sure that's just because these robots were curated and they could pick like these super cool clothes for the robots to wear. So Sophie and um, Patrick were both kind of more vintage inspired clothing, which I always love vintage. And then,
Do you real quick? Do you think that maybe like the vintage inspired clothing was like a reference to earlier times when these people would have been in abusive
hmm,
relationships not by choice? Like
oh,
I don't know, like
60s, 50s,
50s
yeah.
era where like yeah, where like Iris would have been like stuck in her
I didn't even
relationship
think
no
about
matter what,
that.
whereas everyone else gets to be modern. She's stuck because she's a robot and can't have freedom. And like it's not that the clothes are what's making it; it's just
Yeah,
that the clothes
that's a
visually
good
represent
point.
it.
And that actually brings me back to um, the last scene when Iris is driving off in the car. The Bee Gees are playing, the wind's blowing in her hair, and she looks over at the other car next to her that's on the road, and there's a robot in that car, that blonde robot, who is has the exact same likings as Iris, same face, everything, but it's a blonde robot, and her hair is totally like 60s, like she has the beehive. I did not notice that
Mm-hmm.
until just now. Um, yeah, that's a really good point. And then in that scene, I also want to mention something I
Yeah.
noticed today is in that scene that blonde robot and Iris kind of look right at each other and you can see past the blonde robot and there's her owner and he's just like yelling at her. I don't know if you noticed that, but it was in that very last scene and he's just like,
Mm,
yeah,
I did
yeah.
not
You
notice
can't
that.
hear what he's saying, but she's kind of in her happy element. She just escaped Josh and she's living her own life now, driving away. She sees that she looks to her left and there's that car driving next to her and she sees that robot and then she smiles at her and the owner behind her is just like yelling or whatever. And yeah, I really like that scene. But anyway,
Then she shows her
her
sign of
fashion, yeah, the
liberation with the
fashion was
hand. Yeah.
definitely like 50s, 60s inspired. And that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Do you do you remember, was Iris dressed in more modern clothing when she was
Oh my
driving the car?
gosh. Yes,
That's probably like what we would need to look
she
at, because the hand
was.
waving, but like if she was in modern clothing while she's driving the car, then that is probably what is showing that like liberation is taking time, and we don't want to go back to
She
that
was.
time
I
period.
think she was wearing jeans and like a shirt and like a leather jacket, like a t-shirt and a leather jacket. I'm pretty sure.
Hmm. Um, yeah. So there are other elements of this, like the design elements that I think are done pretty well. Like you already brought up the covered in blood part, and I think that is like pretty appropriate here. Like they did cover her in blood, and then when they had her eyes go white for the first time and she's covered in blood, it was
Hmm.
very visually effective. And I think like covering her in like that dark red, and then juxtaposing it with the white eyes was a really smart decision.
Yeah, and she definitely has this like creepy vibe about her, right? And I think a lot of that's just like the acting and then
Uh,
probably her own personal traumas because she is a really good actress, right? And I feel like she played that role really well. So she was just super believable. And when she was covered in that blood, I was like, yeah, she looks like somebody who probably killed somebody.
yeah, and then they did do that well. I think the other parts that I like really wrote down here is we I talked about this a little bit before, so I won't go too far into it. Is that they did do a good job at playing homage to what felt like Terminator 2 with Patrick in the police outfit
Oh
because he
yeah.
looked just like Robert Patrick from Terminator 2, and that couldn't have been a mistake. Like when they empathics turns on their headlights or reverses, I can't
Mm.
remember the exact, but they get the headlights on to Patrick, and it just looks so much like the T2000 from Terminator 2, and it was really well done. After that, with the stun gun and him like looking at it, that was a little cheesy for me, but whatever, cheesy for me is fine. Uh, I want to be correct about this because for some reason I want to. I guess the robot is not the T2000. It is the T1000.
Oh, isn't that what they said in the movie though?
So it's probably just the T1000. I could be wrong about that. So Robert Patrick plays the T1000 as in Terminator 2.
Oh, and didn't they say
Just be clear
T2000?
there. Yeah.
When he flashed his headlights on Patrick, I'm pretty sure he said, "Oh, that's the T2000." Did you catch that? Because yeah, because there
Maybe
was that one
no.
scene inside where they look at Patrick who's you know uh acting like he's a cop, so he's in a cop uniform, and they're like, "You look really familiar." Those guys from Ethics, I can't remember, I can't remember the name of it, but they both look at Patrick and like, "You look super familiar. I can't think of where I've seen you from." But anyway, they go back outside. They're taking Sophie out, and then they put their headlights on Patrick, um, or they put their headlights on, and then Patrick appears. And yeah, they say that they're like, "Wait, I know where that guy's from. He's the T2000." It's something like that, I'm pretty sure. So I think they are referencing Terminator when they say that.
And they do a pretty good job on doing that. I don't remember exactly say, but that sounds right. I do remember they say the model number, so why not? Um, that's really all I have for cinematography, which is something in itself. Like
Yeah,
it's not bad. None of it like detracted from the film, but I don't think anything else stood out to me. Like the shots were all very competent. After that is the words
I
I would
think my
use.
favorite scene is probably well, visually is just when Sophie get or Iris gets pulled over by that cop, and it's just I don't know where they are, but they're maybe on like a bridge or something, and there's like this scenic view behind her, and the lighting is really good, and you can see this like black dried blood all over her shirt. Her hair is black. She looks distressed, but she looks I don't know. She also just looks like really beautiful at the same time, and she's like super distressed. And I think the lighting just helps show through, like, it helps capture her acting even better and like the weird twitches that her face does. Because there is a lot of like weird twitches that her face does as a robot. And yeah, I really liked that scene. And to briefly mention the twitches in her face. She said those were like natural. They weren't really like meant to, they weren't part of like the character. It was just something that she did naturally. And they really liked that when she did that. And it just added to her robot character. Yeah.
I love that. Um, okay, I think we should move on to our final reviews here. Do you want to take first stab at this, or you want to let me go first?
I'll let you go first.
Okay, all right. So I believe Companion was an intriguing, interesting film. Um, with really solid acting, a great soundtrack, good pacing, and competent cinematography. So what that comes down to is story. I gave it a 3. Um, it was good. I thought there was little things that were great, and there's some stuff that could be addressed. But I do think that maybe they packed in a little bit too much. Like I think that whole entire section where it turned into the most dangerous game, where they were chasing her in the woods,
Hmm.
hurt the
Hmm.
story a little bit. Um, it had its purpose. Don't get me wrong, but I think like maybe it could have been formulated a different way. So story of 3, acting of 4. Um, acting, as we talked about, the robots did great. Everyone else was wooden, and not necessarily in the worst way. Like that sounds mean. I'm still giving it a 4. Trust me, I don't mean it as harsh as that sounds. But you know, could have been a little bit better. The soundtrack was a 4. Editing, pacing a 4, and cinematography a 3 because it had some really cool imagery and a lot of just okay. So that comes out to a 7 out of 10. So that's a pretty well reviewed movie in my behalf. And I do believe that it is a solid movie to watch. Honestly, if Hollywood can start getting some more scripts like these that are unique and like mid budget movies, they should definitely pump them out.
Yeah, I agree.
But
I
okay,
didn't
what you
really
got for me?
go by the exact rubric that you went by, um, just because my brain is weird and different. But I would
Sure.
say overall, I give it a 6. And I think that's just
Okay.
because I am not as into like the action, fast paced part of it. I mean, I appreciate like aspects of it, um, which are like visually interesting, but I think for me that kind of like took away from the story. But I'm also like kind of a sad, soppy movie viewer. So I really liked the like sad, soppy parts of the movie, and then the female empowerment parts of the movie. Oh, well, I don't know. See, now this is making me want to change my review, but yeah, I definitely say between a 6 and a 7, just because I think there is a lot of important messaging, and I think a huge chunk of that rating comes from this goal of telling this important message about like victims of abuse through like these weird robot human relationships. Um, but I'm also somebody who just, I really need a little bit more visual appeal. You know what I mean? And I felt like it was super lacking in the visual department with like the clothing and the scenes where certain things were shot, and like the lighting. I feel like they could have done a lot better job at that. But it could just very well be that they didn't have, people on set who had those skills. But yeah, I thought it was really good. So I would say the story and the acting are probably, yeah, the reason why I give it that score, the 6 or 7. That's what makes it the higher end of the score anyway. Because I actually did
Fair.
like the
Fair.
acting, and I would say the acting alone, I would give a 6. If every actor did as good of a job as Sophie Thatcher and Lucas Gage, then the movie I think would have been like 8, 9 probably. But yeah, Jack Quaid and um, some of the other actors were just there was just not enough there for me, not enough oomph, and they just kind of made it a little bit less believable. But thank goodness for the other actors that balanced it out.
Janice is
I
bringing
know.
that Jack Quaid shade.
And I like Dennis Quaid. I mean, I do like Dennis Quaid. I think I have similar feelings about Dennis Quaid's face because they just kind of have an annoying face a little bit. But I like that. I like Dennis Quaid. There's just something about his face that bothers me a little bit. Don't hate me.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, so I'll go ahead. We have Janice with us again for the next pod. And we are going to watch Drag Me to Hell, a 2009 film by Sam Raimi. And if I pronounce that wrong, I apologize. I've only ever read it. Um, that has gathered, I want to say, a cult following, but I don't know if that's exactly accurate. It's Sam Raimi, right? So he just has a following. I've never seen it, so we're gonna watch it. We're gonna see what's up with this film. So Drag Me to Hell. We are watching the unrated version. So that's what's up next. I'm free, and all it took was a bullet to the head.
And don't be anyone's bitch, even if you're a robot.
Thank you for listening to Additional Crew Film Review. If you like this content, please check out our other episodes, and otherwise, please subscribe, give us a good rating. All these things help us to be seen a little bit more. We do have a letterboxed. Name is Additional Crew Film Review.